Welcome to The Explainer. If you've glanced at the news lately, you know that over the last 48 hours, the Middle East has basically spiraled into chaos. Things are moving at an absolute dizzying pace. So today, we're going to untangle these rapidly unfolding events, step by step, relying purely on direct source reporting. We got to start with this massive question. How did a single helicopter crash reignite a global crisis and threaten the world's economy in literally just 2 days? Because what started as a localized military incident has sent shockwaves across the entire globe. We've watched a fragile 2-month ceasefire shatter, we've seen groundbreaking artificial intelligence deployed right into a combat zone, tit-for-tat ballistic missile strikes, and global oil markets sent into an absolute frenzy.
Okay, let's dive right into this timeline, just to wrap our heads around exactly how fast this escalated. Monday evening, 7:33 p.m., a US Apache helicopter goes down. Fast forward to 3:30 a.m. Tuesday, and a high-tech rescue operation is already underway. By Tuesday evening, US Central Command is launching airstrikes. And then, by early Wednesday morning, Iran retaliates with a massive wave of drone and missile attacks all across the region. It is pretty much a textbook example of rapid military escalation.
Section 1. The Apache helicopter crash. This is our inciting incident.
Looking at the source reporting, we have entirely conflicting narratives on what actually brought that chopper down. It perfectly highlights the extreme fog of war we're dealing with right now. On one side, you have US President Donald Trump stating firmly that Iran deliberately shot the highly sophisticated helicopter down. But on the other side, Iranian officials, and even an unnamed US official who spoke to reporters, suggested the crash was actually the result of a collision with an Iranian drone. And the real intent behind that collision? Well, that remains totally unclear.
Section 2. The first AIC drone rescue. A truly high-tech recovery.
So how were the 2 US pilots actually rescued at sea? With the Apache down in those incredibly volatile waters near the Strait of Hormuz, a massive question loomed. How do you safely retrieve the crew without putting more manned aircraft or ships directly in harm's way? Well, the solution played out in real life at 3:30 in the morning, and honestly, it sounded like something straight out of a sci-fi novel.
The answer is the Saronic Corsair. This completed the first known AI sea drone rescue in US military history. This thing is an unmanned 20-foot artificial intelligence vessel. It boasts a top speed of 140 kilometers per hour and has a payload capacity of 1,000 pounds. It was deployed by the Navy's Task Force 59, which is the unit set up specifically to integrate AI and uncrewed tech into Middle Eastern maritime security. And it worked. Both pilots were successfully and safely recovered by this drone boat.
Section 3. Tit-for-tat military strikes. The immediate military retaliation. U.S. Central Command forces launched what they termed self-defense and proportional strikes against Iranian military infrastructure. Using Air Force and Navy fighter jets, the U.S. hit roughly 20 different sites. They systematically targeted air defense systems, ground control stations, and surveillance radars down in southern Iranian locations, places like Qeshm Island, Bandar Abbas, and Sirak. Now, according to Iranian state media, these strikes also ended up damaging local civilian water infrastructure. In indirect response to that, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps fired waves of missiles and drones right back at U.S. personnel and bases across multiple neighboring countries. They targeted the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters over in Bahrain, the Ali al-Salam base in Kuwait, and the Al-Azraq military base in Jordan. While the U.S. reported no immediate casualties, just look at the sheer geographic spread of this retaliation. It really goes to show how quickly a localized incident can snowball into a full-blown regional conflict.
Section 4. Choking the Strait. How this impacts global macroeconomics.
Right now, we are witnessing a complete diplomatic and military impasse out on the water. Following the strikes, Iran's military command declared the Strait of Hormuz strictly closed to all vessels, and they claimed they had already struck 2 non-compliant oil tankers. Meanwhile, the U.S. military has publicly countered this. They're asserting that they actually control the strait, that it absolutely remains open, and that commercial ships are continuing to safely transit under their coordination.
The absolute crucial number you need to know here is 100 million. That is the number of barrels of oil that rely on this exact shipping lane to reach the global economy, roughly every single month. We're talking about a staggering 20% of the world's oil flowing through this one narrow choke point. When that gets threatened, the whole world feels it immediately.
And you can see the global panic was immediate. As news of the military strikes and the contested control broke, Brent crude oil rapidly spiked to over $95 a barrel. Energy markets absolutely despise uncertainty, and right now, the Strait of Hormuz is the literal definition of uncertain.
Let's connect the dots on why this actually matters to the average person. Military strikes in the Middle East directly translate into economic pain right at home. High energy costs from the blocked strait are pushing diesel prices to record highs in key American agricultural states. This is seriously squeezing U.S. grain and soybean farmers, guys who are already dealing with tight margins and drought. It's a really stark reminder of just how deeply interconnected our global economy is. And the human cost goes even further than that. When global fuel prices skyrocket, the cost of transporting food rises right along with it, creating this devastating humanitarian ripple effect. Carl Scow of the World Food Program put it really chillingly. He said, "In many places, we're already taking from the hungry to give to the starving." An escalating war in the Middle East literally means less food for the world's most vulnerable populations, in places like Afghanistan and Somalia.
Section 5. The Fragile Diplomatic Peace. Peace versus firepower.
According to our sources, there is an incredibly stark juxtaposition going on between ongoing peace negotiations and the reality of active bombardment. Literally, just as missiles were flying, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed that a peace deal with Iran was in its final throes, while simultaneously warning that he was fully prepared to order more strikes if Tehran didn't finalize the agreement.
The public rhetoric from both sides right now is just blisteringly hot. The U.S. administration has been aggressively warning that Iran must pay the price for delaying negotiations and downing the helicopter. President Trump even posted on social media, quoting here, "The bully of the Middle East is dead."
And that is met immediately by fierce Iranian defiance. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araki warned that intruding outsiders will face dire fates, directly telling the U.S., quote, "Leave our region if you want to be safe." So both sides are deeply dug in right now, basically using military force as a grim bargaining chip at the negotiating table.
So with the strait choked and peace talks hanging by a thread, will diplomacy or firepower dictate the next chapter? We have to ask ourselves, how can this extreme fragility be resolved before it spirals even further? We've got AI drones navigating contested waters, global energy supplies hanging in the balance, and diplomats trading threats while actively exchanging missiles. Will a signed peace deal or an expanded regional war dictate what happens in the next 48 hours? Keep your eyes on the data and stay curious.